Back in 1930, the film People on Sunday premiered in Berlin and was a surprise success. Newspapers hailed its use of non-actors and realism as a revolution in cinema, and it has since been credited as influencing the French New Wave, Italian neorealism, as well as tenets of more recent film movements. People on Sunday shows a group of young people in pre-World War II Berlin meeting and enjoying a Sunday at the beach. A boy meets a girl and they plan a date. Each of them brings a friend along for the date, but the boy winds up seducing the girl's friend. The portrait of the city, the era, and the authenticity of the young, untrained cast creates a dazzling yet simple film even today. People on Sunday was made in 1929 by a small production company called Film Studio 1929. The collective of aspiring filmmakers involved included Moriz Seeler, Billy Wilder, Robert Siodmak, Kurt Siodmak, Edgar G. Ulmer, Eugene Shufton, and Fred Zinnemann. Most of these men would migrate to America shortly after this time and become successful Hollywood filmmakers. In 2011, Criterion recognized People on Sunday by releasing a beautifully restored version of the film, along with a short essay by film scholar Noah Eisenberg, an additional short film by Eugene Shufton, and a documentary about People on Sunday, titled Weekend am Wannsee, produced in 2000 by filmmaker Gerald Kahl. The film restoration of People on Sunday was done by Martin Korber through the I-Film Institute of the Netherlands. It was recreated from 5 original prints of the film found around Europe, all in various stages of decay. In Kahl's documentary, Korber describes his commitment to recreating a historically accurate version of the film.
Das Ziel bestand darin, so weit als möglich eine Fassung herzustellen, die der deutschen Originalfassung so nahe kommt, wie es eben geht.
The restored version of People on Sunday screen credits are as follows: Producer, Moriz Seeler. Screenplay by Billy Wilder, based on a reportage by Kurt Siodmak. Cinematography, Eugene Shufton, and directed by Robert Siodmak and Edgar G. Ulmer. But surprisingly, there are some inconsistencies with those screen credits and those that appear in the Criterion's reissue. Despite being credited as the sole producer in the restored film's screen credits, which were based on original censor records from 1930, Moriz Seeler is remarkably not credited as producer on the Criterion reissue. The Criterion reissue credits Heinrich Nebenzahl and Edgar G. Ulmer as producers, and they extend a cinematography assistance credit to Fred Zinnemann, and then for some strange reason give Moriz Seeler credit as lighting technician. It should be noted that screen credits are very important in the film industry. They act as a way of both associating oneself with quality work, and perhaps most importantly, they act as touchstones defining a filmmaker's career. In the Kahl documentary Weekend am Wannsee, it says producer Moriz Seeler initially hired a fellow named Rohus Glies to direct the film, which would become People on Sunday. At the time of production, it was often referred to as So It Is and Not Otherwise. Kahl continues by introducing 5 participants I had mentioned earlier that would go on to Hollywood success. Putting an image of each along with Glies into a diagram. Seeler is not included in the diagram, as this diagram forms the basis of Kahl's narrative, which revolves around those participants who went on to Hollywood success. It is explained that Rohus Glies quit production early on because of lack of resources and was replaced as director by Robert Siodmak, whose image literally replaces Glies's in the diagram. Kahl then introduces Robert Siodmak's brother, Kurt, and includes him in the diagram. This move is a bit misleading, as Kurt Siodmak's only role, admittedly, in the film was contributing a reportage for which the film was based upon. so obviously Kurt had to have been involved long before Robert took over as director. Cole's efforts were well timed with the age of two remaining participants still able to be interviewed, namely Kurt Seidmack, the other being on-screen talent Bridget Borchert. Kurt Seidmack mentions in the documentary that Robert Seidmack was a locomotive and the others couldn't keep up. Cole takes advantage of this claim and dovetails that into his own voiceover, declaring that they'd sat around the Romanish's cafe long enough talking and making plans, which is also misleading because we were just shown a photograph of Rohus Glees, along with Robert Seidmack and Moriz Seeler, all standing on set, working together, making People on Sunday. But the narrative Cole has chosen is now established, that Robert Seidmack had ascended into control of a hapless production and was now inspiring action. This is an example of an incessant preoccupation with the participants in the creation of this film that went on to Hollywood success, rather than what the historical record shows, one that Criterion ultimately embraced with the release of this film. In an essay that accompanies the Criterion reissue, film scholar Noah Eisenberg articulates both the film's importance as well as its vague origins when he writes, "Almost every person associated with the film, most notably Ulmer, the Seidmacks, and Wilder, would later, after migration to Hollywood and after the film's cultural cachet had accrued over time, take considerably more credit for it than the historical record allows." Let's be clear, what constitutes historical record is evidence, like the censor notes that Korber used to reconstruct the film's original screen credits, or the production photo in Cole's documentary of Rohus Glees standing along with Robert Seidmack, seemingly directing together, while Moriz Seeler stood watching in a suit and a big hat, while the credited screenwriter, Billy Wilder, sat on the ground holding a reflector. Eisenberg continues in his essay with a section that exhibits the murky recollections. In an interview in 1970, Robert Seidmack effectively denied the involvement of Wilder, insisting that he'd worked no more than an hour on the production, and claimed that Ulmer, after just a handful of days on the shoot, moved back to America where he'd been working in the art department at Universal. For his part, Ulmer boasted to Peter Bogdanovich in an interview that same year that he'd organized the entire film and bankrolled it with money brought from America. Similarly, Wilder would tell Cameron Crowe that we all directed it, while Kurt Seidmack maintains in his memoir Wolfman's Maker that the idea was his alone. In a 2000 television documentary on the making of the film, Weekend at Wannsee, Bridget Borchert, who plays the girl from the Electrola shop, recalls with perhaps less of a personal stake, "They didn't have a script or anything. We'd sit at a nearby table while they'd decide what to do that day. It was completely improvised." By this time, Seeler's voice is neither heard nor mentioned. See, Moriz Seeler did not migrate to Hollywood. In 1942, the Nazis detained him, sent him to a concentration camp, and murdered him. Now, consider the fading of Seeler's screen credit as an analogy for a gradual revisioning of history, because over time, the result of adopting misinformation and disseminating disinformation can be the same. Somewhat comically, this Korean release of People on Sunday, also released in 2011, reads a film by Elias Suleiman. Suleiman is a contemporary Palestinian filmmaker who was born in 1960. The credits read slightly different than the Criterion reissue, most notably by crediting art direction by Moriz Seeler and produced by Seymour Nebenzahl and Edgar G. Ulmer. Art direction by Moriz Seeler, Moriz Seeler, has begun to disappear. In 2015, the German filmmaker and film historian Wolfgang Jacobson published a German-language biography of Moriz Seeler. In this book, Jacobson has included photographs, documents, and excerpts from publications with institutional citations, further proving Seeler's involvement as the producer of People on Sunday. I have long wondered how Moriz Seeler wound up with the credit of lighting technician, being he is known as a film producer, theater director, and poet in Germany. In fact, there's a street in the film and television production district of Berlin named after Seeler, and a plaque across town which identifies Seeler as a film producer as well. Perhaps it was a bad translation that led to the alternative screen credit. The word Leitung is used to describe Moriz Seeler's role. This word means management in German, and I believe it can be used to describe the management of electrical cables. So, perhaps that's what led to the lighting technician credit. According to the Producers Guild of America, the produced by credit is given to the person most completely responsible for a film's production. The producer oversees the 4 phases of a film's creation: development, pre-production, production, and post-production and marketing. Because of the non-scripted and studioless nature of People on Sunday, let's combine development and pre-production. This is a contract signed by Seeler as film producer for Film Studio 1929. It reads, in essence, "Dear Miss Borchert, we commit you to a role in our film, So It Is and Not Otherwise, to be shot in the period from July 14th to mid-September. You will receive 10 Reichsmark for each day of admission, as well as a further total of 1,000 marks after completion and acceptance of the finished sample copy. You agree to be punctual and to comply with our orders in any way. After the end of the film, we have the right to commit to a 1-year payment of 300 Reichsmark per month. Of every amount you earn over 600 per month, you will receive 50% of the proceeds. We are required to exercise this option no later than 6 weeks after the completion of the finished film. We kindly ask you to declare your agreement with these terms on an attached copy. Faithfully yours, Moriz Seeler, The Film Studio, 1929. This document is consistent with Ms. Borchert's account of Seeler's early involvement.
Da war ich in der Elektrole am Kurfürstendamm und habe Schallplatten verkauft. Und da saßen 2 Herren, die ich nicht kannte. Und die starrten immer so rüber. Und da sagte der Seeler zu mir, haben Sie schon mal gefilmt? Und da sage ich nein, also da müssen Sie mich verwechseln. Habe ich nicht. Und ja, haben Sie Lust, wollen Sie filmen? Und ich sagte, das ist unmöglich, also wie kann ich doch gar nicht, ich bin doch keine Schauspielerin.
Billy Wilder refers to Seeler as a kind of fixer in a newspaper article for Tempo on July 23, 1929. Dr. Moriz Seeler, as it is known, founded a film studio. This was published just 13 days after they started filming. Wilder continues. Rohus Glees, Murnau's longtime collaborator, directs. Moriz Seeler, eternally searching and experimenting, holds all the threads together. Robert Seeler and Edgar G. Ulmer, 2 new names in Berlin, stand with Schuften, the cinematographer, at the camera. They aren't from the industry or from the literary world, thank God, any more than the 5 actors are actors. This early production photo includes Moriz Seeler left, Eugene Schuften above camera, Edgar G. Ulmer and another man beside the camera. The unidentified man may be Nino Ottavi, who it is said left production early along with Rohus Glees, who is in this photo as well, with his back completely turned. In the background, Fred Zinnemann is holding a reflector among the 4 stars of the film. This photo is from Call's documentary, and as mentioned earlier includes Moriz Seeler, Rohus Glees, and Robert Seeler all together around the camera, as well as Billy Wilder holding a reflector below the talent. In Cole's documentary, restoration technician Martin Korber questions whether a close-up shot of a man from the film is Robert Seeler making a cameo appearance.
Das ist ja ein Bild, das aus den Zusätzen kommt, die wir in der Cinemathèque Suisse gefunden haben. Also dieses Bild war bis jetzt eigentlich nicht bekannt. Und die Brille allein hat mir schon nahegelegt, dass das möglicherweise Siodmak ist. Ich habe dann ein Foto davon gemacht und das Kurt Siodmak gezeigt, der sich ja nun an seinen Bruder eigentlich erinnern müsste, wie er 1929 ausgesehen hat. Und er sagt, es ist nicht Robert Siodmak.
The moment is punctuated by Korber abandoning the suggestion, as if to say, I don't know, I think it could still be Robert. But as confirmed in Wolfgang Jacobson's biography, it is in fact Moriz Seeler appearing in the film. The original screen credits that include Seeler as producer were recreated based on the 1930 censor notes dated January 29, 1930. These had to have initially been created in the original post-production process. In addition, the program notes from the premiere on February 4, 1930 are identical to the screen credits. This shows that before any trial of failure or success, these people had committed themselves to these roles. The original film poster also has the exact same credits that the original film did. There are a number of archives, which Wolfgang Jacobson cites in his biography of Seeler, which show a marketing campaign that lasted at least a year after the film's premiere. Many of these instances included references to Seeler's principal role or interviews with Seeler himself promoting the film. There was an article just after the premiere on February 10, 1930, from Billy Wilder, referencing Seeler's principal role. Moriz Seeler had done a radio program on March 8, 1930, to promote the film. By May of 1930, Film Courier published a feature asking about Seeler's plans to make another film. And although there were additional publications in the following years announcing another film from Film Studio 1929, Moriz Seeler never did make another film. Allegedly, Heinrich Nebenzahl and Edgar G. Ulmer helped finance People on Sunday. These men currently maintain a producer credit for this film. However, it's clear that they did not play a role, such as Moriz Seeler, throughout all the phases of this film. Moriz Seeler was the primary producer of the celebrated film People on Sunday. The Criterion release and all other records should be updated to reflect this truth.